I don't know if you can see that on your screen, but we are live. All
All
right.
right.
Yes,
It's
Sandy
better than
says
being
read.
it's better than being dead, right?
Yeah, exactly right. We made it. We made it. Sandy says read. Welcome to the channel. And you guys, I want to welcome everyone to a special live stream this evening. We have with us Mr. Michael Knost. I'm going to read for you guys his biography. For those of you who don't already know him, this is Michael Knost. He is an award-winning author and award-winning editor. Let's see, he's also a columnist in the horror, science fiction, and supernatural thriller genres. And I'm going to ask you about those things in just a minute here, Michael, because I'm going to ask you the tough questions about those things. All right, he has edited a number of anthologies, including the Legends of the Mountain State series and Spectres in Coal Dust. And he currently writes a column for Shroud magazine. Over the years, he has also penned dozens of short stories. Michael won the 2009 Bram Stoker Award, Superior Achievement in Nonfiction, for his book, Writer's Workshop of Horror. It's a collection of powerful articles and interviews on the craft of writing. And I also want to ask you about that too. All right, he has an international award. The Bram Stoker Award is recognition presented by the Horror Writers Association for Superior Achievement. Michael has also worked in the radio, television, and newspaper industries, and currently lives in Chapmanville, West Virginia, with his beautiful wife and daughter. All right, so this is Michael Knost. I want to thank you again for sharing some of your time with us this evening. It is good to have you here. We
Good
have
to be here.
Yeah, we have a mix of both readers and writers who frequent the audience of Sandy Says Read. So you'll be talking to folks who are interested in your books and your writing, but they're also going to be interested in some of the finer points that you can share with us about writing and publishing and just all the good stuff that you usually bring to writers. And I want to start by picking at something that was in your bio. It lists that you write in the horror genre, obviously, but also in like supernatural thrillers. And I wanted to ask you, of the three genres that were listed in your bio, which one of those is the most comfortable for you to write in, and why? What about it do you gravitate toward?
Well, and in the process, I'm actually doing something else now.
Ooh.
But it won't be under that pen name. Which, by the way, Michael Knost is a pen name. I don't know if you know that or not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but science fiction was probably my first love. Um, but one of the things that I found about science fiction is so many of the readers, especially back when I started, were scientists, and you really had to have a good grasp of
Yep.
science, even though you were using laser guns and stuff like that. Uh, so people were getting gigged, so to speak, because of their science that wasn't as good. So I kind of shied away from that. Not that I don't have good science. I'm not a scientist. And fantasy, there were so many different shades of fantasy, for a lack of a better word. I grew up. I loved the Chronicles of Narnia. I loved, um, the um, tall fantasies, I guess you could say, and so forth. But I really loved the Conan the Barbarian kind of fantasy and stuff. That sword and sorcery. And I loved horror. Came along a little bit later on, and I felt like that horror had the least restrictions as a writer. And boy, was I wrong in that thinking. But that was probably one of the reasons that I drifted toward horror more so than science fiction and so forth. And I had a lot of training in science fiction. That's where I really got started. James Gunn had a weekend, not a weekend, it was a 2-week workshop in Kansas. And I was there in those workshops for 2 weeks. And it was probably my introduction. And, this is a guy that knows and knew everyone, in the industry and science fiction and so forth. And so being around all of those folks, I saw that there was a huge science element to it that, this kid from, West Virginia just wasn't as comfortable with. But to answer your question, probably horror. And the reason for horror is because so many people think that it's about how scary the monster is, or how to build the scariest monster and so forth. And in good horror, that's not the case at all. In good horror, it's being able to create characters that you care about, create characters that you want to not only cheer for, but I'm a firm believer in your readers live vicariously through those characters. And so if you're torturing your main characters, and you should be, your reader will feel it. And so it's not about how scary and ugly the monster is. It's about how much passion, or should I say compassion, and we're always trying to solicit an emotion, and horror just happens to be the only genre that is even named after an emotion. But that's not the emotion that we're going for in the horror industry, and that's something that I don't think a lot of people think about. But it's uh, do you care about uh, sympathy and empathy? Those are the two things that you're actually going for. You want your reader to have those as they're reading the story. Long answer for a really simple question. You can see how this is going to go tonight, Sandy. I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. Quite all right. Well, and you're kind of dovetailing into one of the questions I have for like later in the interview, but let's dive into it. And that is this idea of the character in the horror genre, any genre, the character development, so that your reader will identify with that character, or care about that character. Like when I read Return of the Mothman, I cared about Ted Browning. I cared. I wanted him to live. There were a couple moments when I thought you were going to kill him off. And I was like, doggone it, I'm going to have to write him a strongly worded letter if he kills this character. Right. And I mean, I'm
not
really
George R.R. Martin. Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, I thought you were going to kill him off, and I was concerned and I was upset. So I mean, I hear what you're saying. I mean, obviously you want your reader to identify with some character. The main character would be great, right? So I felt that when I was reading Return of the Mothman, I cared about Ted. Now, obviously he's the main character, right? But one of the characters I'm hoping you could talk about a little bit from Return of the Mothman is the sheriff, Mark Adams. That sheriff character, he didn't just go on an arc, but I saw him go through like this ebb and flow type of arc. I mean, he wasn't a static, sheriff type of character that you see in some different, I don't say horror novels, but any type of novel. You get this typical police officer character or typical sheriff who's kind of like the foil to the main character, right?
right.
And I didn't see the sheriff completely that way. So I don't know how much you remember about Marks. It's been a little while. It's been a hot minute since you wrote the story. But what can you tell us about that character and the way you developed him, or the life you gave him?
Well, he was the antagonist in a number of ways. But I don't like a pure evil antagonist. I like an antagonist who is doing things in their mind for good. They're what the things that they're trying to do are things that are going to be things that are going to help other people and so forth. He also that you know kind of bumpy ride that we get with him is also something that we experience with people all the time that we don't see quite a bit of, but they're in and out of our lives. And every time that we talk with them, every time we come around them, we learn more about them that we think we have judged them and knew who they were. And then they'll turn around and they'll do something or they'll say something that makes us go, oh, you know, okay, that didn't go into the equation up until now. And so that was one of the things that was intentionally done. When we start, he is the ex of his ex,
Right.
and so Mark has he has a lot of he's threatened, number one, by him being back in town, um, because he wants her back, and he's actively trying to get her back. And then all of a sudden, the ex that she was in love with before him comes back into town, and so he has a personal, I guess you could say, a personal issue with what's going on. And then he as the sheriff, there are legitimate crimes that are going on and heinous crimes, and he's trying not to allow that to mix in with his feelings, but they do bleed over because we're human.
Yeah.
But in the end, if we talk about spoilers, the main character pushes people away and has for 20 years because of a lot of the things that happened when he was younger. And he moves to North Carolina, and so he has pushed all of his family away. He's pushed his friends away and so forth. And doggone it, when he is going to go up against the Mothman, wouldn't you figure that he has to bring his friends together for a certain task in order to defeat this entity?
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't have enough friends, that he's trying to build back. So Mark was a guy that was never his friend and came into being part of the solution. And if you really think about it, if you've read the book, Mark probably is a bigger hero in the story than just about anyone else, which was very interesting, I thought.
Yeah. 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 Mark was surprising on a few levels, but there is rich symbolism in what you just said too, about, Ted, had pushed away so many of his friends, and he had to bring those friends back together to defeat the evil. Right. I mean,
Right.
there's symbolism in that,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There was symbolism. There's rich symbolism all over the book. I mean, and I'm sure you're aware of it since you wrote it, but I mean, there's so much symbolism in there, but I'm so sorry. There's stuff going on with my phone over here that I thought I had turned off.
That's okay.
So I'm sorry for the distraction.
But you're right. And a lot of people don't, I felt like that I was worried that I was a little heavy-handed with the symbolism in certain parts. And then when I talk to people who read the book and they tell me they loved it, and I start discussing some of those things, it never even occurred to them. The wall that he was building outside the
Right.
house,
Right.
you know, that was a parallel of what was going on outside with what was going on internally with him. He had built a wall up inside to block people
Mhm.
out. And if you'll notice on that block wall where he had to tear down that one section for his grandmother to be able to see her rose garden, which was on the other side, um, that was Lena, internally, the symbolism, because we only get her name, her full name, before we even meet her, and that's on the lighter, and her name is Rosalina. So she's the rose, for him. And so those symbolisms, the symbolic things that are in there were definitely planned, but I worried myself sick that I was too heavy-handed with it at times. And editors and the publisher and everyone that I talked with said that it was fine, that it was good, and many of them didn't even realize what they were. But everything that I do, there has to be a symbol, there has to be some kind of a meaning to it. It can't just be at the very beginning. Here's a good example. A lot of people may not know this. At the very beginning, he gets a phone call and he's stapling uh, some material onto, because he's a furniture maker working in a furniture company, and he puts the staple gun on the shelf next to a box of, and I went for days trying to figure out what was he going to put that next to, because I wanted it to mean something.
Right.
And it could have been anything. It could have been staples. It could have been whatever. But it was a box of spacers, things that will keep things separated, keep them pushed away. So my symbolism, that I actively tried to do, are minuscule, and they turn out to be, they may not mean anything to anyone reading it, but it means something to me.
Mhm. Okay, I missed that one at the beginning, the box of spacers. I completely missed that one. That's interesting. And I wanted to ask you about, the use of symbolism today. And this is getting into, some of the, I guess, some of the editing and publishing talk that I wanted to delve into with you. And that is the modern audience, the modern reader, your typical modern reader today. I mean, are they still picking up on symbolism and the richness of that? I mean, back in, our Anglo-Saxon writer would have put, a fruit tree in a story, and everyone who read that or heard it spoken would understand, okay, the fruit tree symbolizes something pornographic's about to happen and get all excited about that, right? But today, are we noticing symbolism anymore? Are our readers grasping it? And as writers, as authors, how much time and effort and energy should we be spending on planting these symbolic moments?
I think a lot of time, that goes along with theme as well. And I think that a lot of time, um, I think it's best that if you're creating the story, especially if you are an outliner, and a lot of people talk about the difference between being an outliner and a pantser, which means you're doing it by the seat of your pants, so to speak. And yeah, I did a radio program that was for writers one time, and there were about 6 guys, and they asked the question of me, um, "Are you an outliner or are you a pantser?" And it was like there was a divide among them. Some of them were outliners, some were pantsers. And I said to them, to be honest with you, we're all outliners. I don't care who you are, I don't care what side of the fence you're on. But for those who are the seat of the pants, your first draft is your outline. And when it comes to outliners, your first draft is probably going to be the equivalent of the Panthers' second draft or something along those lines. So, but go back to talking about theme and talking about, those kinds of things. I think that it's best to work out that outline, to work out your story as best as you can. And then you can figure out, because later, with me, a lot of times, I can't remember about the wall, if it came in the outline or if it came later after I was working and then thought, oh my gosh, this would be brilliant, you know. Um, but being able to put it in as it comes, I think what I'm saying is my answer would be to focus on the story first. Make sure that you have a really solid story. And those other things are only going to make that story stronger. Um, and, having a parallel, and I teach a class on this, or I used to, on writing in parallel. And that goes right along with, Ted is building this wall, or he's tearing down this section of this wall so his dying grandmother can look out from her hospice bed and see the roses because she made that comment. Um, and it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with what's going on inside his heart, and what's going on. And so we're able to kill two birds with one stone without killing any birds at all. And I think that's the beauty of writing, is being able to, you know, create a great story. But then when it comes to theme, when it comes to, symbols and metaphors and all of these other things, um, they just make a better story. Because those metaphors and those things by themselves mean nothing. And that's why you have to have a strong story in order to build it. Here's another thing, Sandy. We've talked and talked about the Mothman, and not one time has the Mothman even come up, because it's about the people, you
Yeah.
know.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yes. All right. Okay. Before we go to our next questions, I want to give a shout out to some folks who have joined us in the live chat. In the live chat, we have Juan L. Hearn, who says good evening to the two of us. And Nessa Brown has joined us. Nessa's in there now.
I
Says
know
hello.
Nessa.
Yeah, say hello to you guys. It's good to have you guys joining us. If anyone has some questions that they would like to ask of Michael, just put those in the chat box, and hopefully I will notice them showing up over there. All right. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, with Return of the Mothman, was preparing it for the making of a movie. Obviously, Return of the Mothman did become a movie, and congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's, for a lot of writers, that's the dream, right? We want to see our characters on the big screen. We want to see our story go to the public in that way. So I guess I have a few questions I want to ask you about that. And one of the questions would be for other, aspiring authors. What was the process? I mean, who did you pitch it to? How did you pitch it? What did that process look like?
Well, just to be quite honest with you, I never wanted it to be a movie. That was something I did not want. I had two major companies come to me. I never sought out anyone. One of them was the Sci-Fi Network on television, and there was another one, but I never wanted it to be a movie. And the reason why is because the people in the story mean so much to me. The characters, they're West Virginians.
Mhm.
And I'm a West Virginian, proud West Virginian. And so often in movies in Hollywood, they tend to make us look bad. And I did not want that with this story. And so I turned down two, major offers. And then some folks got in touch with me and asked if I would be interested. And I don't know if they knew the story behind me about not wanting, it to be a movie and the reasons why. And they said, we are West Virginians
Ah,
who want to tell West Virginia stories.
nice.
And at that
Perfect.
point, I said, I would love to meet with you. And we sat down and we talked. And they're a small, independent filmmaking company, and uh, is it a box office hit, smash, or whatever? No, it's not. But it was never intended to be. But they loved the characters just as much as I did, and they were respectful of the characters. And so that's the only reason that the book became a movie. So I never ever pitched it. I never tried. I don't even know how the Sci-Fi Network or anyone even found out about it or whatever. But um, yeah, West
Okay.
Virginians wanting to tell West Virginia stories, and you can't get much more West Virginian than the Mothman because
Okay.
we have trademarked that
Mhm.
creature as our own, so to
Mhm.
speak.
Yeah. Well, isn't there's a statue of
Yeah,
Mothman,
yeah.
right?
It's
I
in Point Pleasant.
Okay.
And back in the 70s is when the Silver Bridge, that's where the Silver Bridge collapsed, and that's where the initial sightings of the Mothman were. And so people were saying that the Mothman was trying to warn people, and some people were saying that he was a harbinger of doom, and so many different things. And I kind of talk about all of the or many of
Mhm.
the different uh, thoughts of who and what the Mothman is. But so that's where, and they also have a Mothman festival there that has become huge. And when the book first came out, I went there and literally sold thousands
Oh my
of that
gosh.
book. It was crazy. And so they showed the movie there, and
Mhm.
I got to be there with the film people, and I was sitting on the front row. And the movie is quite different than the book, just so you know. Uh,
Really? Because
and I was,
I watched the trailer and I was like picking out the scenes watching the trailer. That's
yeah, well,
interesting.
it was, I say quite, it it was it there were differences. I'll just
Oh,
say
okay.
that
Okay.
it wasn't
Yeah.
tremendously different.
Okay.
I should have had a better choice of words. But
Nope.
as I'm sitting there watching
Yeah.
it, um, you don't know how people are going to react. And I've got this huge room full of people behind me,
Mm.
and they all know where I'm sitting. They're, I don't know. It feels like that they're looking right at me at the back of my head,
Yeah.
and at the end of the movie, uh, it was a standing ovation, and it went on for probably 10 or 15 minutes, is what it seemed like. and I was blown away. But there again, you're at the Mothman Festival, and these
Yeah.
people, they love the Mothman, and so that was pretty cool.
That's wonderful. That that's cool. Yeah. I like that story. I'm intrigued though. Yeah, I wonder how, like, the folks at the Sci-Fi Channel, I wonder how they heard of that book and thought, "Oh, we need to get in touch with this author." I wonder how that happened. Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I've wondered as well. Who
Hmm.
knows? Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah.
And probably here's how things work. If I actually pitched it to them, they probably would have turned it down. The way things are.
Yeah, yeah, how that works. True. Great. Well, let me switch gears away from the Return of the Mothman. Let me just, before we get away from it, I want to say I did read it. I enjoyed it tremendously. I really did. I've been expanding, what I've been reading the past couple of years and reading more horror novels, more thriller novels. And I enjoyed that thoroughly. That was wonderful. And I was rooting for Ted. I wanted Ted to succeed. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. So with the horror novel theme in mind, I wanted to ask you about the workshop of horror. Um, I don't want to call it an anthology, but the workshop of horror work
It's an
that you put
anthology.
together. Is it an okay?
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
an anthology. It's a nonfiction anthology, and it's
Okay.
a writer's workshop of horror,
Okay.
which came out in 2009.
Okay.
And basically, what I wanted to do was I wanted to. There were so many writers that I was friends with and have known for a number of years, and I always thought talking to them and reading their works, thinking, man, it would be great to read uh, an essay from so and so on the subject of so and so because they kill it, in their books. And so that's what Writers Workshop of Horror is, and it's not really for horror writers; it's for anyone. It just happens to be. Now there are some that are tailored to horror writers, but for the most part, writers are writers, and these horror writers are focusing on one element of the craft. So you have some people who are writing on plot, some who are writing on dialogue, and some who are writing on whatever. And that was a dream of mine for a long time. And Mort Castle had done this a while back before this one had been done. And Mort, God bless his soul, he was just named as one of the lifetime achievement awards in the Horror Writers Association just last week.
Oh,
And
nice.
so it, with his, I didn't want to do what he did. Uh, and so I went into a different direction, but it was kind of the same type of thing. And man, it really hit. Clyde Barker is in it, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of different people who are in that. And then there's also, I don't know if you're familiar, but there's a writer's workshop of science fiction and fantasy
Mm.
that I did as well. Neil Gaiman is in it, and
Mhm.
Orson Scott Card, and um, Harry Turtledove. I'm looking at a poster I've got on the wall. Ursula K. Le Guin, Alan Dean Foster, and all of the big names. And it was kind of the same thing there. And then more recently, a couple of years ago, I did a writer's workshop of horror too. And with it, it has Stephen King and Anne Rice and R.L. Stein, and so many of those huge names. And that one won the Bram Stoker Award as well. So
Nice.
that was the
Nice.
the second award. I think you can see them right back here.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah, you mentioning that the science fiction fantasy one, I I've got most of my fantasy stuff is over here on the shelf behind me, and I think it's buried back there. I think it's on that shelf back there. I'll have to dig that out and bring it to Imaginarium so you can sign it for me.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll have to bring that. All right. So this collaborative work that you do, I mean, the things you're talking about here, this is like a collaborative work. These anthologies are with these, different authors giving their perspective on different aspects of horror or science fiction and fantasy. And that speaks to me. I like that collaborative aspect of it. I like that a lot. And I was hoping that you could talk to the audience a little bit about that collaborative spirit as the editor, because you're the editor bringing these things together, and not just talk about the collaborative spirit, but the professional angle of it too. I mean, these are authors who, I mean, the names that you're talking about are some big names in the industry. They're people who know what they're doing and they know how to be professionals.
Right.
So I'm thinking, what are some tips, or what is some guidance that you could give to folks in the audience for being a professional author who can collaborate with an editor in something like this? I think that's the question I want to ask you, is just what guidance can you offer to authors who want an opportunity like that?
Well, one of the great things of all of those books that I mentioned, of the writer's workshop of horror, horror to science fiction and fantasy, the one thing that I loved about those books was the fact that there's no one way of getting to the big stage. And there are a number of ways that you can get there, and there are a number of ways that you can do things. And there are some of those books that one person says one thing and another one says the exact opposite. And neither one are saying this is the way. Neither one are saying you have to do it this way, but merely it's a fact of them saying this is how I do it, and so I think it brings a lot of freedom to up and coming writers, knowing that there is freedom, that you can do it, this way. You can do an outline, or you can write by the seat of your pants, um, and that whole aspect of collaboration was something that I loved and I cherished. I thought really made those books really good, because nobody is saying this is how you have to do it. Everyone is saying this is how I do it, and this is how I've gotten to the stage. And I think that brings volumes to the reader who is trying to find their own path to the stage. But as going back and talking about professionalism, um, yeah, when I first started editing anthologies, it was Legends of the Mountain State. And these were stories based on ghosts and legends and so forth of West Virginia. And I had some great writers in that, but I had people, and they would send a story, and some people, a lot of them were not professionals, um, and then they would get upset if they were rejected or whatever. Or this is the one that always got me, was I would read a story from someone who had never been published, and I'm ready to do their story. I'm ready to include their story, and I would give them notes on how to make it better and what I would like to see, and they throw a fit, and because they think that they have that tunnel vision, Um, and I'm saying this because I don't do that with just up and coming writers. I don't care if it's Stephen King. I don't care if it's Neil Gaiman, whoever it is, they're getting notes. It's very rare that I've ever just accepted something without notes and marking up things. And I can tell you this though, there has never ever been an occasion that a professional writer, even I don't care how big or how much money they make or how much clout that is added to their name, I have never ever had a professional throw a fit about my notes. We've talked about them. They would come back and they would say, "This is great, man. I didn't see this. I didn't think of it along these lines." And then there were other occasions that, I disagree with you on this, and here's the reason why. And then I would read the reasons and I would go back and look at it again. And I agree with you. Let's keep it. Let's keep it as it is. So I think really what I want to say is your editor is not trying to make you look bad. We're trying to make you look good. Okay. That collaboration, we're not trying to steal your thunder because, there's no place in any anthology or anything, especially with my stuff, that says your byline with edited notes, from Michael Knost. No, it's your story. I just want to make it the best that I can. Here's one of the things that I like to think of it is I want to show you where holes can be poked. Because if I don't, the reader will. There will be a lot of readers who will. And guess what? It's not just your name on that book. Because I don't want someone reading it and going, they're not going to say your name, because if you're an up and coming writer, they're not going to say, "I would not have expected that from so-and-so that I've never read a story from." They're going to say, "I would never expected to read a story that is, has so many holes in it that Michael Knost edited." Because editors have reputations and they've built their names because of the quality that they're known for. And so if you have the opportunity, and we're not perfect, I want to make sure that you understand that. As an editor, I use other editors. There's never a time that I submit something or I put something out that has not gone through at least one editor. Never, ever. And the reason is because they're going to see things that I'm not going to be able to see. A good example of that, a good friend of mine who he was the editor of Writer's Digest at one point, and he was the guy who he edited Return of the Mothman. And I did a story one time. It was a weird Western, and I was talking about this character and his wife, and this was during the Old West. And I made mention that they moved to the current place that they were at because of their father's hard expectations and the wife's Mormon traditions. And all he did was write at that section, on that section, he wrote out traditions. Mormonism was just getting started at that time. And I was like, oh my God, he's right. So those are little tiny things that, can be brought out. But now here's another side of it, because I'm able to give you both sides in the professionalism aspect. in collaboration with editors because uh, Return of the Mothman is a very short novel. It's not even, I don't think it's even 50,000 words. But it qualifies in the novel category with the Horror Writers Association as a horror novel. And so my editor loved the book. God, this is great. This book is really great. But I think it needs to be beefed up to about 90,000 words.
Oh my.
And I said, and we're good friends. And I said, why? And he said, well, generally speaking, that's what they're expecting more so. And I said, I don't want to pad, 40,000 words and make it something that it's not. I really feel like what's there is strong, that it's good as it is. And maybe instead of a novel, we call it a novella or something like that. But I felt that it was good as it was, and he couldn't give me a reason other than the expectations,
right?
And so we never argued or anything like that. But then what I did was I took most of his notes, and that's one of the things as the writer is you go through the notes and you take what you agree with and you really read over and over and over and over again on the ones that you disagree with, just to make sure and be true to the work, not just to yourself or your feelings, because the editor is not writing that for any other reason than to make the work better. And so the more and more that you look at it over and over and over again, and then whenever you get to the point that, no, I think I'm going to stick with what I have. And that's what I did with Return of the Mothman. And then it was about 3 or 4 years later. No, it was about two years later. I was out at I was teaching a workshop, and he came by, and he picked up the book, and it was a finalist for the Bram Stoker Award. That book was. It did not win, but it was a finalist along with Josh Mallerman's Bird Box, which was enormous, and Josh and I, we were both there for the awards, and neither one of us won. And so the editor comes by and he holds the book up and he says, "Boy, I was wrong about the length on that, wasn't I?" And I said, "No, we're not wrong. But with what you were thinking, it's just that I felt like that this is where it's better served." So that's a professional collaboration. Collaboration doesn't mean that you have to take everything that someone says, but what it does mean is you have to give it serious consideration. You really have to look at it, and you have to get your pride and your ego out of the way and really look at it from a different perspective. Because if you want that work to be the best that it can be, if you allow your pride or your ego to stand in the way, it will fail. And yeah, and I can tell you this: it was easy for me with criticism and so forth with folks like that. And the reason was when I was in broadcasting for 35 years. I managed radio stations, worked in television and so forth, even though I do have a face for radio. And I remember when I was really young, I sent a tape of me doing intros to songs and stuff like that, to a big professional that I really thought of, I thought was, one of the gods of radio, and was, by the way, don't get me wrong. And I asked, if you have time, would you take the time to listen to this? And if you have any pointers,
Mm.
I'd love to hear them because I want to be better. I want to get better. And so he went through them, and this was back in the day that we didn't have email and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And so back in the mail came back in the letter and had all these notes, and there were 10 different things. And I was reading through them, and the more I read, the angrier I got.
Oh,
I mean, I was just so angry. And I was like, he has no idea what he's talking about. I thought he was really good. And look at this, he all of these different things, not one of these, he's not right on any of these. Why did I waste my time? Well, I could see what he's talking about on number 2, that I understand. But these others, this is crazy. I don't even know why I did this. And probably it was about a day that I was going through it again, going, yeah, number 2, I understand. I mean, probably number 6. I get what he's saying on number 6. He's, he's right.
Yeah.
He's right on number 6. And then by the time it was all done, I was like, oh my God, he's right on every one of these. He is absolutely right on all of these.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
took me getting my ego and my pride out of the way for me to be able to accept. Now, he wasn't being mean or anything like that. He was very truthful. He was, showing me, the error of my way without making fun of me or anything like that. And but it was painful. It's hard for us to go through that. So when I started writing and I started asking people for critique on my work, I was ready for it. And so that's probably one of the tips that I would tell you as a writer. Number 1, don't communicate back with whoever it is for at least a week, and if they say, did you get it? Yes, I got it. Thank you so very much. I'll get back to you later. And because if you're angry, they've taken the time to help you. And trust me on this, when I say this, I've done it so many times for other people. When we do it, that takes away time from us doing our work. We're not charging you to do that, unless, I do it. I have on the side that I'll do a complete manuscript critique and so forth. But that's taking away from our own work. So we're not just, doing all this to try to make you look bad or anything like that. It's taking away from our time with our family. It's taking away from our time, whatever it is that we love to do. So I guess what I'm trying to say is get rid of that ego and so forth. And if you really want to get better, because if you really don't want to get better and you don't care, and all you want is someone to just pat you on the back and say, that was great, let your mom read it. Your mom will tell you that it was wonderful. But if you really, truly want someone that's going to tell you the truth, who knows what they're talking about, listen to them. You don't always have to agree with them, okay? But don't make up your mind on the first read. Go through it several times, digest everything, and then you have to make up your mind if you're going to use it or not. But you don't have to burn bridges. You don't have to go back and tell somebody that, thanks for nothing. This was, yeah. But I guess that's probably the whole thing that I would suggest when it comes to collaboration is being a professional means you have to be a professional,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
being a professional many times is um, you just communicate in a way that you're not trying to hurt the other person, or you're trying to burn the bridge, or just because you're angry.
Mhm.
Because if I would have spoken to the guy in radio at within 5 minutes of reading it, we would not be friends today. I can tell you that, but we
Mhm.
are.
Right.
And also, I would have missed out if I would have allowed the anger and my pride and my ego to take control of the situation. I would never have gotten better. And God knows that I needed to get better. And I didn't think that I did. I thought, I don't know, many times I think that so many of us, we want someone to say, yep, you're right. This is
Mhm.
great. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, confirmation. And many times it's happened to me over and over and over again when if I'm seeking confirmation, I'm going to be met with confrontation internally myself. Um, but you know, and I had it was about a year or so ago. My close friend Tim Wagner, I sent him a short story, and I said, "I want you to read this, and just tell me what you think. You don't have to go into any great details." And he sent me an email back, and he said, "This is great, man. I love this story." He said, and I wrote him back, and I said, "Do you see anything that you got any tips, any ideas?" No, no, this is perfect the way it is. And I wrote him back and I said, "Tim, don't you lie to me. I know there's something wrong in that, and I want you to point it out."
Oh, that's
So
funny.
you get to a point as a professional that you want the critique, and
Mhm.
sometimes you may even get to the point that you're wanting critique, and there really doesn't need to be any. And so, but that's what being a professional is, and that collaboration is. Uh, be humble, and go into it with the heart that I want to learn to be better, no matter what it takes.
Mhm. Duan is asking in the chat if the writers that throw a fit. Do we feel that this is because people, writers generally don't understand the full purpose of the editor?
It could be, but there's so many of them. Something that I have found too is a lot of time you have new writers. Um, when I first started doing the editing and anthologies, uh, every rejection that I made, I would write notes, and I would say, "Hey, I appreciate you, submitting. I'm not going to be able to use this. If you like a few notes, and I would just general notes, and you would be surprised at the number of people who would want to argue and want to
Mhm.
fight, and um, and you also have to keep in mind, I've never seen those names again. And what I mean by that, they've never been published to my knowledge. You never see them again. And the whole concept comes down to, did they want to get better? Was they really serious? Were they really serious? Um, and I think a lot of it is people. I think a lot of it comes down to people um, expect to be good, and if they want to be a writer, they're going to be a writer next year.
Mm.
And unfortunately, for most people, 10 years is about the process time that it takes for you to learn all of the things that you need to learn and to be able to put them in motion. So I think there's a number of reasons for that. um, and but a lot of my friends, I was in music for many years as well. I was a studio musician in Nashville for about a year. And you see the same thing with musicians and singers,
Oh,
so but for those who uh, for those who are professional and are willing to listen and really listen and put aside, all of their uh, ego and so forth, you can learn, and you will get better. You will get better if you keep doing it, and perseverance. Um, because oh my gosh, people were talking about getting published in the for the love markets, where they don't pay you anything, but they'll
oh,
publish it, and so often they're not edited, and if they are, they're not edited by a lot of folks who know how to edit and so forth.
mhm.
And um, I'm very thankful that I got so many rejections, because I'm so thankful that so much of the garbage that I wrote in the younger days never
Yes.
made it, for it
Yes.
to come back to
Oh,
haunt me.
yeah. Yeah.
So that's another thing, is avoid that there's something to this, that writers, it's like, oh my God, all I want is to see my name on the book. That's all I want. I want to see my name on the book. I want my name on the book, and I don't care how, if I have to pay somebody to be able to do that, I'll do
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of, companies that will scam you, and they'll
Mhm.
they'll they'll do that. Um, but then you get to a point like me and so many others. I don't care if you put my name on the book. I want you to pay me. So you
Yeah.
can put somebody else's name on it. I'm perfectly fine, but the check better be written in my name.
Mm. Well, I had one of those instances where I was editing a book for a publishing company, and the author was not pleased, with the suggestions I was making. And when it was time for the book to be published, I requested that they not put my name on the book. I didn't want to be listed as the editor, and I just I just asked very politely, I'm like, you know what? I don't think that I should be listed as the editor on this. I don't think that my name needs to be on it. I don't need any recognition, is how I put it.
Right.
I don't need any recognition. And
I
they
don't
didn't. They left my name off. And I was pleased with that.
I don't if it's just editing of a book for someone, unless they request my name to be on it or in it,
Mm,
I don't I generally don't want it to be on there at all. Now,
mm,
an anthology, you're more of an anthologist than
mm,
editor with that your name should be on there and so forth. So I get what you're saying.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. All right. What other? Oh, I know. I wanted to ask you about a recent anthology that I know of, the Storms of the Brain anthology. Are you able to talk a little bit about that collaboration and how that came about?
Yeah. You've got Nessa. If
Yeah,
she's still watching, Nessa has a couple of stories in that.
yeah.
And basically, what we did was, I did a writer's workshop class. It was actually a course, And basically, we came in together, and it was a brainstorming session, which was the reason why the name is what it is. And everybody came in. It was online, it was on Zoom, and everybody came in with an idea that they've never worked on before, that they've never done anything along those lines. And all I wanted was just an idea. It didn't have to be a complete plot or anything like that. And so every person has their turn, and they talk about the idea that they have. And then everybody else gets to brainstorm and come up with, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about, and whenever you get to this point, what if she does this? You know, and every writer turns around going, oh my God, I never thought of that. This is really cool. Which, that's part of that collaboration as well. And everybody, nobody is stealing anybody's works or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so then they took that, and then we went away, and we came back about a week or so, and we did another one, and they give us an update. Okay, so the idea was originally this, and here's what I'm thinking now. And then we went into another brainstorming session. Oh, that's really good. I love that. You could bring back that one thing here, and you could take this over here. And so you've got all of these people who are chiming in, and they're giving their input. And then we went a couple of weeks later, came back and did it again. So then from that, I told them, write the story. I want the story. And so what they came up with, some of these writers are professionals, but the majority of them are writers who've been around a little while, who need to be pushed. And probably another majority of them are up and coming writers or just getting started. And so you have this eclectic group of people who, wide ranging of the talent and the education and the knowledge of the craft, and how far that the, I guess, levels of polish on the craft, so to speak. And so Tony Akery, his publishing company is publishing it, and so I went to them, and we got that set up, and so I'm really excited about it. It's a book that oh, and Sandy Linder, you're in the book too. It just dawned on me.
Yeah. Well, please keep talking about the brainstorming session, though. It's bringing back all those good memories of the brainstorming sessions. Were so cool.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And but that is, and now we're looking at everything is finished, everything is turned in, and it looks Tony promises me it'll be ready for Imaginarium. So we're going to have a book signing event at Imaginarium this year. So any of the writers that want to come and take part in that, they can do that as well.
Wonderful. That'll be great. Yeah. I'm excited to sit at a table next to Nessa and do signings. That'll be fun.
Nessa is, I'll tell you this, and my wife will tell you as well. Nessa has come to do a live writing workshop that we do here in our area. We have some cabins at the state park, and I think you're going to be coming to one with the
one in November.
Yeah. And Ann Vandermeer is going to be there, who is a living legend. But Nessa was at one of the workshops, and Nessa is one of these people who has a servant's heart. She is one of these people who is constantly looking out for you and constantly asking, "Do you need something?" And so forth. And she's one of my favorite people in the world, right up there with Sandy Linder as well. Because I'll tell you, Sandy, there's not too many people that I would do these kinds of things that we're doing right now for.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate it. I appreciate it. You're sharing nuggets of wisdom with people, and I appreciate that. Let's see. Jeff Lamar has joined us in the chat. He's a favorite at Imaginarium, and he is saying, we all have a hard time killing our darlings, and that's why we need editors to be brutally honest with us. Having a thin skin about it only serves to make your writing weaker. I agree.
I agree,
Yeah.
and so many times people think whenever you say "kill your darlings" that they're talking about characters, and it's words. Kill those words because that we consider darling. There are times that I will write something, and there'll be something that when I write it, I'm thinking, "Oh God, this is so beautiful. I love this. I love this." And when I go back into edit mode, it sticks out. And I'm thinking, God, I love this, but it doesn't work. It doesn't fit with everything else. And there was a time that I probably wouldn't do it. But now, if I read something that I love and I feel that way about, automatically, I'm like, I'm going to have to get rid of this. I know that I am. So here's a tip that I do. I have a file that's on my computer, and I keep it on my external drive as well. And it's for all my darlings that I had to get rid of, that I had to kill. They're not dead. I've moved them into another place. And you know what? There have been times that some of that stuff I've got to recycle. And they actually found a place in other stories that it made better sense with, and that it went more along with the feel of the story, so to speak. So, but
there
yeah,
you
don't
go,
worry.
guys. That was worth the price of admission right there. So Michael Knost recommends you have a mausoleum, a folder on your computer for the mausoleum where you can put in your darlings that you don't kill. You just put them there until you need to resurrect them.
Yeah,
I like that. All right.
you may never use anything from it, but if it makes it easier for you, then do that. With me, it's just I don't like to waste anything, and I'm the one that eats what is known as we call them heels, the ends of the bread,
The ends of the
the loaf
bread.
of bread.
Yeah.
Some people call them other things. We call them heels, and a lot of people won't eat those, in my family. And I'm going to give it to me. I'll do it. It's bread.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Juan says he does that too. If there's a good line or paragraph, it just gets saved just in case. Yeah. Save it just in case. All right. Well, so Michael, we've been here for a little over an hour. I was hoping I didn't have to take more than an hour of your time. So tell us what you've got coming up next, what we should be looking for on the horizon from Michael Knost. You mentioned there was another genre coming up that you were going to write in another name, perhaps. Is there another pen name you're going to use?
I'm still trying to wrangle that in my head.
Okay.
But I'm going to be writing I've already written. It's a novella, and it's a weird Western, and it's for Crystal Lake Publishing, which is a South African publisher.
Okay.
And it's me and let's see, Keith Lansdale, which is Joe Lansdale's son, Joe is a good friend, and I've never got to even meet Keith, but he's a great writer. Reminds me an awful lot of his dad. Um, but James Equilone is the other writer. So we're going to have 3 novellas in this one one book. In it, they're all weird westerns. And one of my favorites, and Joe Lansdale read it, and he really liked it, loved it, and at least that's what he said. So that's going to be coming out. I'm not sure when that's going to be coming out. I have a short story. I have, and that's under Michael Knost. And then Michael Knost, there's a short story for another anthology that, oh gosh, you would think that I would have a better brain than I do, but I'm old.
Well, and we've got characters who get in there and distract us, so it's hard to keep everything straight, you know.
The anthology is it's about protagonists who are older, so they're not these young whippersnappers, you know.
Okay.
And let's see. Not going to be able to remember the title of it, and I'm sorry, but I did a story on it, and it's one of it's a story that I really love, and it's also really creepy, but it also embodies what I feel like my heart, which is about kindness. I'm a big advocate of kindness and love and being good to people, being good to each other, and so forth. And that's what this particular story is about.
Nice.
And there's another one that is going to be coming out. It's a horror story as well, and it starts out with a woman who's at night digging a grave, digging up someone. And
digging up.
Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Excellent.
And I'm writing a novel right now, and it is a traditional Western. So this one is not going to be a weird Western, and probably going to. I'm definitely not going to be using Michael Knost for it, which is a pen name. My real name is Mike Collins. And so my original radio name, late at night, I played classic rock, and my original radio name that others put on me was Mad Dog Mike.
Right.
And so I'm thinking I may go with Mad Dog Mike Collins as a pen name. And so it's a traditional Western, and I am loving it. I'm having a blast with it. But you remember when I was talking about science fiction, where you have readers who are scientists, and they're real picky about their science and so forth. Westerns, you have people who are historians.
Oh yeah,
especially of the Old West, and they're real picky. And if you get something wrong, they're
gonna know.
Smack your wrist. Yeah, and so. And that's when I wrote the novella that I was just telling you about. That's a Western, weird Western. I was constantly terrified of everything that I would write. Was it accurate? Did they have that back then? Or whatever. So I had a couple of friends who are really big name Western writers to read it, and
there you go.
They only gigged me on one thing, and it was really small, and so I was tickled to death about that, because I thought I would have messed up a lot more. But the book that I'm doing now, I'm really having a blast, because I feel free now. It's just like I feel a freedom that I haven't had in a long while, and so I love that.
In writing the Western, you're finding
Yeah,
that freedom.
yeah,
Huh.
yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about Michael Knost. That is a pen name, and a lot of people ask me why did I choose Michael Knost. And Sandy, you may have heard me say this before. I worked in radio and marketing for 35 plus years, and so if I'm writing in horror, which is what Michael Knost was initially about. Um, if I choose Knost, Knost, I'm on the bookshelves between Stephen King and Dean Koontz.
Right. Yeah.
So the pen name is more of a marketing aspect than anything, and it's worked well. It's worked really well when it came to that. At least I think, but you never know.
Makes sense.
So, but I think I think my dad, for years, my dad's passed away now. He's been gone for a couple of years. And it was funny because I think he was hurt that I was not writing under his last name, Collins.
Right.
And then later on, he was such a fan, which was odd because, I didn't write anything that he would have read. But man, he loved to tell people that that I was a writer and that I was very successful, and I've been to other countries and won awards and stuff. He thought it was, that I was a superstar, and I wasn't about to tell him that I wasn't. I wanted him to think that I was, and so later on, he would tell people that his real name was Knost. His last name was Knost.
Oh, that's great. I like that. That's wonderful. Yeah. Well, and I wonder, yes, obviously books are still being sold in bookstores. There are still brick and mortar stores that are still making it. But I wonder if that last name, I wonder if it's still as vital for a marketing strategy as it used to be, right? I wonder. Because I kept my married name after I divorced. I kept Lender because it's in the middle of the alphabet.
Right.
And I wanted to be in the middle of the alphabet on the bookshelves. Because my first novel, was sold in Barnes & Noble. It was a hardcover sold on those shelves. And I wanted the L right where it was. I just left it alone. It doesn't matter anymore.
Knost also had that kind of a dark sound to it. Knost,
Yeah.
So there was a number of reasons other than that went along with it. Yeah. And you make a good point, but there's still a lot of brick and mortars, and there's still, if they're on the bookshelves, you also have to take into consideration a lot of people are going to the libraries now again.
True.
And they're on the library shelves like that as well.
Okay.
Through the Dewey Decimal System.
Yeah. Okay. So other than the brick and mortar store, how can people find you online? How can we stalk you and know
you
how
can
to
find me
your
on Facebook for one thing.
Okay.
And that's probably where you'll see me. Well, you won't see me on any other social media. I think I do have a Twitter or X account, but I always hated it, so I never did anything with it. So I don't even know if it still exists or not. But you can also go. Here's something I have. A lot of I no longer do online classes. I used to do quite a bit of online classes, and I love doing them, but it just takes a lot out of me. It takes a lot of time. And I've got family, and I like to be around them quite a bit. And they don't like to be around me as much as I like to be around them. But my girls are my life. And but on michaelknost.com, which is a website, obviously. There's a lot of different things you can go and buy books, which will take you to Amazon, I think, and you
Okay.
can buy them from there. But there's a lot of the videos. There's a great number of them
Right.
that you can
Okay.
purchase and watch. And all the classes are over an hour long or so.
Mhm.
And you can contact me at any time on my email, which is michaelknost@me.com. And if there are any of the classes that you want, or if you want a list of a lot of them that are not even on there, but there's quite a few.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. Okay. What have I neglected to ask you that you would like to share with the audience before I let you go this evening?
I think you've covered everything. I think you did a marvelous job. I think you
Well,
did
thank you.
great.
Yeah. Good, good. All right. Well, hopefully everyone, I want to thank everyone who joined us in the chat. Thank you for asking some questions this evening and helping out in that way, you guys. Hopefully everyone got something good out of it. I got some good stuff out of it. I know that I need to make a
Nice.
folder. I need to make a folder on my desktop to put
You
the
have to name
darlings
it
that I
the
kill.
Knost folder, okay? You're going
The
to have to
NOS
use
folder.
yeah. And by the way, I will say this: I'm going to be at Imaginarium. I don't
Yeah,
do
that's right.
conventions very much, and that's probably going to be the only one that I'll be doing anymore. And I'm going to be the Toastmaster
That's
this year.
right. Yeah,
So
very good.
they I think they've made a terrible mistake by giving the microphone to someone who loves to talk more than the Sunday preacher.
Yeah, it'll be good. You'll keep everyone entertained. It'll be good.
I don't know about that.
All right. Well, Michael, thank you again. I so appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to share nuggets of wisdom with the audience. This was wonderful. It was very good.
Well,
And yeah,
I really appreciate you asking me. It makes this old man feel really good that you think that I have something to share, and I appreciate that.
I know that you do. All right. Thank you so much. All right, you everyone, I'm going to end this live stream in like 2 seconds here. I do leave. Thank you everyone who joined us in the chat.